We are back at it on the SuccessFlow Podcast and really pumped for this topic. It's one of those we're realizing with these concepts as we are wrapping that they show up everywhere. This is holistic. These are all principles that are showing up in multiple areas, but we're trying to double click on certain aspects. And even though it goes hand in hand, it may be a synonym for other things that we've talked about. The real concept of sacrifice being the main topic. So the bamboo banger for today is the concept of sacrifice and how it shows up in multiple areas of our life. Some of the synonyms being, the idea of discipline and prioritization. And discomfort is the big one for me, where the concept of sacrifice can be a turnoff to people, but you're doing it day in, day out anyway. This is, it's economics. There's only so much time, and deciding on what we're going to sacrifice, cutting out the non-essential to a certain point is a key for success. So I know that you were down, but what are some of your key initial thoughts on the topic of sacrifice for today?
Yeah, it's a big word. I think anything that you want out of life is going to come at a cost. Anything you're going to do or strive to do is going to come at a cost, whether it's, literally there's opportunity cost, right? I'm going to do X, so I have to give up Y. And Y is that sacrifice. And talking about your comfort zone, especially when a lot of things that we talk about, when you're in periods of growth, you've got to sacrifice your comfort zone. You can't, if you're not growing, you're dying. You're just hanging out, running parallel. You're not going an upward trajectory. And so you have to sacrifice that slow go parallel comfort zone in order to continue growth in your business and your professional or personal life. So I think it's a great topic. I think there's a lot to it. From an entrepreneurial perspective, when you're an emerging entrepreneur, startup entrepreneur, you're sacrificing almost everything. Your whole focus is purely just to get that business off the ground. And many times you're the only one. You may have a business partner, so you maybe have one or two people, but it's not like you have staff right away. You're sacrificing your financial stability. You're sacrificing your time with your family. You're sacrificing all the things that you would really want to do and enjoy to dedicate almost every waking hour and sometimes sleeping hour to get this business off the ground and do whatever it takes. You just have to have that mentality in order to get what you want. And if what you want is a successful entrepreneurial journey, that's the sacrifice you have to make early on. And then the fruits of your labor will hopefully pan out, in future years, where what you've built now allows you to get all of those things back. So I think it's entrepreneurial, personal. We can talk about athletics and all the, we got the Olympics going on and the sacrifices those people make day in and day out just to win one gold medal every 4 years, which is an incredible feat. But how many gold medalists can you rattle off the top of your head in the last 20 years? Like, you might have one or two or three, like the Phelps or the Ledeckis, or, I remember Michael Johnson with the gold shoes.
Michael Johnson, right? Flojo. I still use that. That's how you know we're getting old, because I'll tell people, like, slow down, Flojo. And people are like, is that a Florence Johnson reference? I'm like, yes, it was. The nails.
Dude, he was the man. He was the man.
It was that era. Like, I think, like, our age, we talk about the Michaels, Jordan, Jackson, Johnson, Tyson.
Yeah.
Those were some greatness all roped into one, their personal issues aside.
Be like Mike.
There's a lot of dark side in that grouping of Michaels, but that's a heck of a quartet. I actually pulled up the Webster definition of sacrifice just out of curiosity. It's the act of giving up something valued for the sake of something else regarded as more important or worthy. And with everything you just kind of rattled off, and I think the Olympics was a big driver for this topic, and we'll be tying it in for the title. But like for you and I, we talk about all the time, no one sees. I think that's the problem, especially in today's day and age when, we're kind of doing it on a podcast right now. But on social media, like everyone wants to show off their highlight reel. And the sacrifice isn't going to be on the highlight reel. It's just not. And you've told me a lot when you and I are at the laptop late at night for these passion projects and for the groups that we're working on. That comes to a sacrifice to my household, Paula. And the communication aspect there is super helpful because she knows how important this is. I do make time for that, and she's on board with that portion of sacrifice, and I have to make it up in another area, but people don't see it, and that's okay. That once you get peace with that, you almost enjoy the sacrifice. It is a part of your identity that you can relish in, and it's actually just for you. And if you can reflip that frame of this is for me, this is something I can have for myself and enjoy it, that's when you start getting powerful. Like for me anyway. I don't know your thoughts there.
No, it's true. And I think you hit the magic word of communication. And that's what I struggled with early on when we were growing. It was like, this is my sole focus. And that was the communication is all I'm doing. But it got to a point where it's like, we still need to see you. Like we're still a family. Like we still need you in our lives. And so there was a point where it was like almost sacrificing too much, where I wasn't giving that time. And that's a lot of the work that I've done in the last couple of years in finding alignment was derived from the conversations and the communication that I had with Kim. And it was like, how can I be a better husband? How can I be a better father as I'm growing a new business? Like, it's not easy. I don't really recommend it for anybody. But when you make that choice, you do have to make those sacrifices, and you do have to have that communication with those that are in your household and be like, hey, this is something that we're working on, and I'm doing it for us and our legacy and the things that we're doing. But I fully understand what the heck is the point of doing all of it if you're not there in the end? So I need to sacrifice maybe a coffee meeting or a networking evening event to hang out with my family, right? So it's a cost either way. So I'm going to sacrifice a potential new client because I've got a family night and I've dedicated myself to spending time with family. And you got to find that alignment. That one night of networking is not going to make or break your business. Now, could you have a huge opportunity? Sure, but you'll never know. And what's more important is making sure that your family and the people that you're doing it for are there. And those were some very hard, sometimes tearful conversations. And that's what you have to sacrifice as you're building something as big as a new business. It's more than a passion project. It's like, this is our livelihood to try and get this thing off the ground. And you do have to have those years of sacrifice, but you also need to remember that the people that have your back, they need to see you and they need that time as well. So you got to find that alignment and make sure you can manage your time. And that goes back to flow state and working efficiently and doing all the things and doing it later at night after the kids have gone to bed and time blocking a few hours while it's during dinner from 6 to 8. Cut that other stuff out. You got another 12 hours that you can work on what you need to work on, spend the 2 hours with your kids. And it's hard when you're in the groove and you just want to go all the time.
Couldn't agree more. And we were talking before we jumped on the new quotes that I love. Love working in these quotes from great people, and had no idea who this gentleman was. But in family relationships, love is actually spelled with the different 4 letters, and it's T period, I period, M period, E. And that's simple. I just like that a lot. That's from Dieter F. Uchtdorf.
Who is that?
He was a German aviator and pretty impactful guy, very faithful guy too. So wanted to throw that in since we just discovered it. And I think that, like, especially with family and all that, one of the movies that I was thinking of too that came to mind was A Pursuit of Happiness. Chris
Smith.
Gardner. Yeah, Will Smith played Chris Gardner, and he is literally battling homelessness and everything above to keep food for his child, and it eventually pays out. Spoiler alert if no one's seen that movie, but popped into my head pretty quickly when the concept came up.
Dude, if they haven't seen that, if you haven't seen that movie, you're living under a rock. Go see that movie. It's a great one. But you're right. I mean, that's another thing too, is like time with the family, but sacrificing everything you've got for that other person. Like, you're literally sacrificing your life to make sure that other person is like, you are. I don't care what happens to me. I'm making this work because I care so much about you. And that's a whole nother sacrifice as a father, as a mother, as a husband, as a wife. when you've got companionship in your life on a personal level, or you've got parenthood, there's a whole nother level of love there. And time is an aspect, but you're going to do some things that you probably never thought you would. You're going to sacrifice many things to make sure that those people in your life are okay. Speaking of movies, and not to change it from a positive to a negative note, but it's taking a positive out of a negative situation. Do these names ring a bell? Alex Tevez, Matthew Robert McQuinn, and Jonathan Blunk.
Nope, can't say they do.
You remember in Aurora, Colorado, the movie theater shooting from The Dark Knight?
Absolutely, I do.
Those three guys jumped on top of their girlfriends to protect their lives and took bullets and lost their lives for those women to continue on. Three heroes out of that very horrible situation. Can't imagine being in that situation. And ever since the possibility of something like that happening, if I go to a movie with my family or I'm anywhere with my family, I'm very aware of I don't know, maybe I'm weird. I think about this stuff and I'm like, what would I do if something like this happened? And I know that the number one thing I would do is I would figure out how to keep them safe, and I would be the shield. Right. And
it's situational awareness, man.
It's crazy.
I think about it in restaurants, and I think that a lot of individuals, not men or women, don't have it. And quite honestly, it's because we are in such a comfortable state. It's not, we think that stuff only happens on the news, and our day to day, we can forget that. But it was actually kind of a weird situation when I first started dating Paula, because, coming from Ireland, guns are very taboo, and there's some funny stories there for a later time. But when I started carrying in the movie theater, concealed, it did not, she was a little shocked by that. But that is literally the definition of the ultimate sacrifice, right? Putting yourself above others, someone that you truly love. That's back to the definition. And in that situation, their life is more important than yours. It's
100%.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, that is the ultimate. But yeah, I just, I think about that stuff a lot. Probably more than any one person should, but I guess maybe it's just because I've always tried to be prepared for anything that can potentially come my way. Mm-hmm. But back to the Olympics and hot topic, we got to get on a little bit more positive note. In athletics in general, right? These guys and these women are sacrificing not only their time, but their bodies. They are breaking their bodies down to the levels that you and I will not be able to fathom. To be the fastest people in the world, to swim the fastest, to jump the highest, all of it that goes into winning medals in the Olympics, let alone, or I should say qualifying for the Olympics, let alone winning medals in the Olympics. It's insane to think. We'll never know what that grind is like and the amount of sacrifices they make, not only for their personal glory, but for their country, right? To represent their country and to be the face for that one event, for that one time in their life and that one moment, and to be ready for it. They have to sacrifice so much in order to get to that point.
And it makes it heartbreaking when things go wrong. I've honestly been a little bit of a poor patriot in my viewing this year, but I caught a clip of a Korean archer that she was set up and a bumblebee landed on her trigger and then her finger right as she was about to shoot.
No way.
And that shot, you spent your entire life, most of your life, training for that moment. And for that to go wrong, it literally just hits you in the gut for that individual, even if it's not your own country member. It just crushed me. I didn't know if I sent that along to you. That was a big one.
That's a tough one. And that's hard too, right? Because that's we always talk about control the controllables. You can't control that. There's
nope.
It's the only thing that you can get out of that is what are you going to do? There's nothing I could have done differently, and
there's even some bigger life lesson there.
Yeah. That's a crazy one. I did not hear that or see that clip either. But you think the hurdlers.
Archery is probably one you've got another shot. You know what I mean? Archery probably can do a little bit older. I don't know the details. Someone might might be correct.
Yeah.
But
you're not retiring super
anyway.
young like some of these other ones.
Right.
I was watching the hurdles and, I don't know who it was, but just completely tripped over the hurdle, like didn't get high enough over the hurdle. And this guy qualified for the Olympics. Like he can do this in his sleep. And that one moment, that one shot, he sacrificed so much to get to that point, and he just clips the hurdle and eats it. Like he just couldn't finish the race. Like he fell. And, I don't know. It's so fun to watch. I love watching the Olympics, and it just brings me back to like, not nearly at that level, but when you're at the peak performance of basketball in high school at 17 years, 18 years old, and the amount of work you put in, and then multiply that times a million, it's just like, holy crap, the amount of work that they had to put in to get to where they're at.
And the ideals behind just like the character and integrity about what the games were for, breaking down barriers, which is, it's not, it could be argued whether it's serving that or not this year, but the fact that they're trying to, and we can come together as the world in itself is just so darn refreshing with everything going on right now in the world. Did you see Snoop Dogg? Snoop Dogg's been there? I didn't realize. Did you hear what he was getting paid per day to do it?
For hanging around? No.
$500,000 a day, $500K a day.
Just to hang around and be doing this thing
and announce and commentating. Yeah.
Oh,
that's
wow.
That's the efforts they're putting to get the young folks watching the Olympic Games.
Is that true? I haven't even thought about that. Like, are younger people not watching the Olympics?
That was the ideal behind it, to get the viewings up. Yeah. Snoop.
Wow.
Snoop double G. I'm messing that up, but yeah.
Wow. That's crazy. Yeah, I think I would sacrifice a lot for $500K a day to hang out at the Olympics.
To be yourself. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Especially for a great cause like the Olympics. Got to talk about defining success for yourself. Snoop, where you at? I wanted to, again, connecting dots, and something that's been on my mind heavily lately is, because I'm always trying to find mental ways to reframe things in my mind so I can have it all or as close to it as possible. And these mental tricks you can play are great. And it's become so crystal clear to me that I myself, selfishly, being of service and improving other people's existence brings me joy. That's a great loophole for me because it's holistic. I win, they win. It's amazing. And it's the concept of service. It's ingrained in our DNA that when we help our fellow humans or beings, that we feel better. It's a really beautiful part of our DNA if we're operating, naturally. And so this concept of service usually requires a sacrifice, almost always, but that feeling of service and being of service to others is this huge loophole that changes your frame, removes anxiety, and removes, it was kind of what we were talking about before jumping on here today. You're not putting the perspective of me, 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 me. Mm-hmm. You push it outward, help someone else's life, and the law of reciprocity takes over and is what it is. So that's been top of mind with this too. There are sacrifices involved with service, but that servant leadership, that improvement of others' existence on this life has so many benefits to yourself. The economics just seem to work to me. I don't know. I rambled for a while there.
No, that was, what my first thought was, like being in service at a very, very basic level, to kind of pick up on what you're talking about, holding the door for someone else and sacrificing you being first in line. Like think about like walking up to a coffee shop or something, and there's someone right behind you, and you open the door and you hold it, and they walk through and they go ahead of you in line. You're sacrificing your position in line to serve others. Like as simple form, as basic level as that can get. That's what you're talking about. Now you can obviously get much, much bigger than that, and you're serving others at such a high level, but you are sacrificing potentially your own personal gains right then and there. But the return you get in longevity, like later on in life, the opportunities that come back your way are far grander oftentimes. And even if they're not, who cares? Right? Who cares? Because your mental state at that moment put a smile on your face, put a smile on their face, and some other pivotal moment happened an hour later because of the mental state you were in after that service act from 60 minutes ago.
Absolutely. And how visceral is the response when people don't acknowledge it or say thank you?
Oh my gosh.
I've seen it so many times, and myself included. Like, really?
Yeah.
Like, we're not even going to acknowledge this? And that's so true. And it's because of that sacrifice. That is so funny.
Yeah.
Hadn't thought about that in a while.
Well, and it's so like your reputation, right? You're talking a little bit about reputation. Like, you're known as a guy that's going to give back, and you're known as a guy that's going to serve others. Is there something that you would sacrifice your reputation for? And I think that's a challenging one, because you usually spend a lot of time building up your reputation. And this kind of goes on morals and other core values. And are you going to sacrifice your reputation? Are you going to sacrifice your core values? Are you going to sacrifice your morals to get ahead a little faster? Or are you just going to continue down the path? And I think the right answer is just continue down remain patient and steadfast, because the good things will come your way. I don't have an example like off the top of my head. I didn't take any notes. It's just kind of popping up off the cuff. But is there anything that you would sacrifice for a moment who you truly are in order to get ahead? Would you be that opportunistic? And I'm sure there are situations where it would make sense, but I think for the most part, you probably, I don't know. It depends on how many people would know about it. Are you going to cut corners to get ahead and sacrifice who you really are? It's not really you, but you're doing it because you know that it'll get me there. It'll get me to point A faster than if I just remain. So it's a tough conversation.
This is where you'd like to say, especially being on a podcast, I'd love to say no, but haven't been in that situation quite yet. I mean, I think of Live. I think of the golf tour. People getting very, very opinionated about it. It's kind of been overshadowed recently, but it's really easy to say, oh, I wouldn't go join a tour backed by the Saudis and take a ginormous generational wealth building impact contract. But I know, just out of fun and the love of golf, I have thought about it, and I'm like, I don't know that if I were in that situation, I really don't. Like, I love the PGA Tour, and to me, it's all about chasing Nicklaus and Tiger. That would mean more. And I just think that the paychecks are so high enough, but I haven't had to deal with that level of wealth yet.
Yeah.
But I think about that. That's to me, you're sacrificing reputation. You're known as a dollar chaser. But those guys are also saying my family and their generational wealth means more to me than chasing Nicklaus or Jack or whatever the PGA Tour is today. So it's one of those. It's like LeBron or Jordan. You're never gonna.
I think so too.
People love to argue, and anyway.
Yeah, I don't think there's any winner there. I mean, obviously, that's a great example. Live. I don't know. I don't think, more often than not, you probably wouldn't sacrifice your reputation or your morals to get ahead. But in a situation like that, when it's like so grand and the opportunity is so great, even if it's like, I've really only been doing this to take care of my family, and this is an opportunity to get me there that much faster, then you might pivot. I don't know. Interesting take or debate for sure.
Yeah, I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time about it just because we just did an episode released a week or two ago with Ben Brown. But are you going to sacrifice your taste palette and your desires for palatable, delicious food and your sofa and couch? Because if you don't sacrifice that, you're going to sacrifice your health later. It's just a timing. Looking at it from your future self. Again, these are the mental loops that can make it easier to sacrifice, because you're going to gain it back as a future individual. God willing, you live that long. And if not, well, you're just living a better life now, and you're not going to know it anyway if something abruptly comes up. So health, I think we've hammered on that one quite a bit, but always good to be top of mind and repeat for the listeners.
Yeah, well, I think it goes back to the definition of sacrifice. What's more important to you? What are you willing to give up to achieve the thing that's more important? And if you really want to get 6-pack abs, or you really want to at least just feel better than you are now, and are you willing to sacrifice your Friday and Saturday nights out? Are you willing to sacrifice the fast food to get to where you really want? And that episode with Ben Brown was incredible. Just super eye-opening. That guy's awesome.
Absolutely. Well, per usual, listeners, we appreciate you sacrificing every other podcast that you could have flipped on right now and spending this time with us. Let us know what your favorite take from the Olympics was, what you're sacrificing, and what you'd like to hear more of. We'll be back at you next week.